Portfolio Talks with Tyson and Michael Lloyd, or Mike. I still don't know which way to go, Mike. Sometimes I introduce you as Michael, sometimes Mike, sometimes HomeHappy. I don't even know. You're a man of many names.
It'll work. Whatever. I answered everything.
Perfect. I'm like, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's been a crazy week, so we got a lot of stuff to kind of chat about and talk about. But I think first, just want to say thank you for those of you who have subscribed and commented and shared. It's been a fun little journey of us just kind of starting this portfolio talks to provide conversations to you through your screen that sometimes people aren't able to get into, especially now with the hybrid work roles or work from home. A lot of people kind of operate their days in silos, and they don't really get, privy to these conversations about learning about education, about finances, mortgages, legal, all the other fun stuff that is finance. So we're very blessed to be able to provide that for you, and we're grateful for all of you who have subscribed and along for the journey. So Mike, I think I'll pass off to you first because we were kind of chatting before we jumped online about kind of customer service, and you said you had a story to share, which I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I think everybody's watching this will know what I'm talking about, but it seems like either there's people out there or companies out there that give you great service and we kind of take it for granted. And then the majority of big businesses seem to be just trying to get away from service altogether. It seems like since COVID, they just use it, call our 1-800 number and get to be put on hold forever and never talk to anybody ever again. And it's bizarre because they want your business, but they don't really want to deal with you. And I think it's just, we're at kind of a breaking point, I feel like, where I won't even get into my WestJet call, but that was terrible. They wouldn't even answer the call during the day. They said we're too busy, and it just hangs you up. But recently, I was calling a branch, and you can't call the local branch anymore. You have to go through their 1-800 number into hell. And it literally left me on hold for a minute and a half before it said the next person won't be available for 15 minutes. Right? Like that's not customer service. Sorry, but if you actually wanted my business, you'd be wanting to answer the phone. And I saw a stat in the US with people looking for mortgages that 80% of people will deal with whoever answers the phone first.
Yeah.
So, and I can relate to that because quite honestly, I mean, if I send a company an email and I don't hear back, which is common, or, you phone them and leave a message and never hear back, like, why would I want to deal with you? I don't get it. So, in general, I think the story is like, if you're in business, you should be in business. And answering your clients' questions, to me, it just seems so basic. I mean, I want to be available for my clients pretty much whenever they need it. And I don't understand how other people don't think that way. So what do you guys think?
Customer service sucks.
Yeah.
It's it's tough. I've had so many bad experiences. Like WestJet, I just recently I had the same thing when we were coming back from our Europe trip. We took off from Rome, and while we were in the air, sorry, as I was about to take off into the air before my reception cut out, I got an email from WestJet saying that our connecting flight, so we're going from Rome to Calgary, Calgary to Abbotsford, and right when we're about to take off, they're like, WestJet's on strike, so your flight from Calgary to Abbotsford is canceled. And I was like, sick. While I'm going to take off, I can't even do anything about it. So I lost reception. I'm in the air for whatever, 10 hours. By the time I land, I pop up my phone to see what my options are. It's been 10 hours, so everybody else has taken every other flight. So I couldn't even get a flight for about a week with WestJet. I was like, okay, let me look at Air Canada instead. Air Canada, not for 3 days, but on the third day, the ticket prices from Calgary to Abbotsford was $1,300 per ticket, which I can't justify that. Then I was like, whatever. My wife's like, well, maybe we'll just drive. I was like, cool. Let me look at Hertz Enterprise. All the cars are gone. So I'm like, sweet. I'm basically stuck here trying to call them, no answer, no help. I ended up figuring it out. I had to end up buying with Flair, which was like $700. This Flair, which is brutal. Couldn't even bring a bag, like it was just a personal item that's smaller than the rest, so that was annoying. When I finally get home, I try and call WestJet. Can't get a hold of them. Exact same experiences. You email them, no answer back, trying to figure out how to get my refund. When they finally respond back, which was I think 3 weeks later, when I was finally able to get somebody on the phone, they're like, "Oh yeah, it doesn't count as a refund because it's out of our control. It was a strike, so it's not refundable." And I was like, honestly, they just kind of wore me down where I was like, I don't even care anymore. Like, I don't even
Yeah.
want my money back. I just don't want to deal with this. It's been taking too much time, and the value and the cost analysis of me continuing to pursue this for a refund versus just moving on. Like, I'll just move on. But it's horrible customer service. And I got a banking story I'll circle back to as well. But I don't know, Tyson, you probably got a bunch of stories.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting to deal with the new generations that are kind of on the front lines of everything right now. And I don't know if it's necessarily, something that we lay at their feet or it's a management thing. But I remember, 25 years ago when I worked in retail, the company that I worked for had super high standards for customer service. And they were like hard on the staff. And so we had a standard of like engaging every customer that comes in the store and making sure you ask these questions and making sure that you're helpful. And they had, like a measurement that you had to live up to. And it made the experience so much better. And you can go into that same retail outlet now. No one will say hi to you. They won't make eye contact. They won't help you if you ask. They if you do get somebody, you ask them a question, they don't know how to get the answer. And I just think that, it's sort of like the whole generation, the standard has been lowered, like the expectation has been lowered, and so they're living up to the expectation. And then we call it like horrible customer service. And I don't know, like what do we do about that?
Do
How
you
do
see?
we?
I kind of see that. I don't blame the generation, but I blame them in a way that there's less people to work in these jobs. So
This is true.
therefore, the management has let up on all that stuff because they know that if they hold them too hard on it, they're going to just quit and go somewhere else. And that's not a slam on those people. I think it's just like I think in the 80s, if you had a job, you were happy because you had a job and you weren't going to risk it,
Yeah.
not following company rules. And I wonder if we're in that place where it's just because of demographics, you just can't, operate the same way. I certainly think management would use that excuse. I don't know if it's reality because, I don't, sadly, it seems like, customer service used to be that was the level you had to have in order to compete. Now there's all sorts of reasons why, like, screw it. Seth Godin, I don't know if you guys remember Seth Godin. He's great. He
Yeah.
writes books and stuff. He's really interesting. I think it was him that said, if you truly wanted to fix, like when you call into 1-800 and get put on hold forever, if it said if you've waited too long, press 0 for the CEO's wife, and it went through to his wife, that I think you wouldn't ever have anybody on hold ever again. They'd find a way.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
while I give them the excuse of demographics, I don't think that's I mean, look we have AI, we have a lot of different technology things to solve a lot
yeah.
of these things, but I don't feel like they've used it to kind of raise the level again. I think they've just left it where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of it I think is laziness from the management side. Maybe not laziness, but there's just so many other things. It's a huge problem. So when it comes to public companies, for example, I'll talk about Best Buy. So I used to be a manager at Best Buy in my previous career, and we were exactly what Tyson explained. It was strict rules as far as I can't remember what the slogan was, but there was some kind of slogan where, um, you had to say hi to people and greet them if they're within 10 feet or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was 10:30, so 10 feet or 30 seconds you had to say hi to them. And the important thing was sometimes they would get annoyed of like, all right, so many people are talking to me. And we had some customers that were like, I'm leaving because people won't leave me alone. We're like, all right, cool. That's far and few between. But the rest of them is nice. We're like, hey, let me know if you need anything. Hey, let me know if you need anything. It's like, yeah, sounds good. Um, but in the beginning of my career, it was very easy because I just told people like that's what the rule is. Like, okay. Later on, people like, they wouldn't really do it until I had to take the time, which was annoying, but I'd take the time to explain to them the benefit of it for them. I'm like, listen, like you're gonna develop interpersonal skills. It's a good skill set for you to learn how to build a connection within 30 seconds. Like, well, how's it gonna help me? Well, bro, it might help you pick up a girl at a club. He's like, all right, cool. I'm like, all right, there you go. He's like,
Done.
now I'll start doing it. Or you know what? It's gonna help you, just make somebody's day. It's gonna help you feel better because you can have a conversation. And by nature, we as humans like to communicate. So there's so many different ways that you had to keep like sell it to each and every employee, which truthfully was annoying, but that's the job. And I don't think that happens anymore. Even now, like when I go to Best Buy, it's like they're all socially awkward. Like no one says anything to you. everyone scatters. It's kind of like how Zellers was back in the day. When you walk in, it was like boom, a bunch of hyenas. They run away.
You have to chase them down.
Yeah, literally, it was crazy, man. But it's weird, but it's funny enough. I get some of the best experience at like dollar stores, because there's just a few people that are there, and I walk in, like, hey, how's it going? You kind of talk. It's whatever. It's people that have been there for a long time, so I don't know. There's a bunch of different reasons for it, but the tough thing is when it impacts our clients. So we talk about incorporation. So for those of you who don't know, you don't always have to incorporate your business. There's many different structures you can have. If you're someone who, let's say I'm going to start a business with my golf clubs, I'm going to be like a golf club fitter or cleaner or something like that. It doesn't make sense to incur the cost right away of corporation, because if you incorporate yourself, you're creating a separate entity. So there's Vishal, and now there's Vishal, the club cleaner. So there's two different entities, which means you have two different tax returns, two different tax filings. You have to have like a minute book, which is like a legal requirement for your corporation, and then you got to pay your professionals to advise you on all that stuff. So there ends up being, not to mention liability insurance or whatever, ends up being a lot of expenses. So you can also just run as a sole proprietor, which means I can have the name of Vishal the club cleaner, but everything that I earn from that business is taxed to me personally. So my regular income, say I'm Mike's personal assistant, and then I'm also have this company, both my incomes would be combined, and that's going to be on my personal tax return. So that's all fine till you get to a certain point. And then if you're earning too much money, I need to incorporate because I don't need all this income on the personal side. So effectively, your corporation is like an RSP where you can earn the money in your corporation. You can pull it out later on if need be. That happens to a ton of our clients. The problem with customer service, going back, is at the branch level, the banks, customer service is horrible. I had to incorporate one of my businesses. This was probably last year. So I already have a holding company, I have my operating company, have another company, and I was like, I need to open up another one for a commercial cleaning company. So go to the bank, and I was like, I need to incorporate because I don't want to have all this income. Personally, we need to have an incorporation and have a partner. So me and my business partner, we split it 50-50, and we need a corporation. So I go to the branch, and I walk into a certain branch. Like I was about to say, but I guess we can. We might get removed on YouTube. So I got us a branch. I went to a branch, and I'm like, hey, I need to open up another corporation because that's what I did last time. They're like, oh no, process has changed. And I was like, and that's all they said. I was like, what's the process? They're like, oh, you have to call online. I was like, okay, cool. What's the phone number? Give me the phone number. I call online. They're like, no, no, they're wrong. And I left. So they're like, no, you're wrong. They're wrong. You have to go back into the branch. Like the branch has to do it. I was like, okay, fine. So go back to the branch. And I'm like, hey, I need to open up a corporation. You told me to call them. They told me it's a mistake. I need to come into the branch. They're like, no, 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 they're mistaken. That's the new process. They just don't know it yet. I'm like, how do they not know it yet? Like, what do you mean? They're like, they just don't know. Probably talk to someone that doesn't know what's going on. I'm like, all right, you just call. I just want to figure this out. So they're like, I can't call. I have to call. I'm like, fine, I'm gonna put on speakerphone. So I call them on speakerphone, get the meeting booked. All right, and the earliest we can do this, the 2.5 weeks from now. Well, I'm supposed to start earning. I'm already earning income on this business. Like 2.5 weeks doesn't work because now it's going to be taxed to me. Like that's the best we can do. I was like, okay, that's kind of annoying. So I had to call our clients, and I backdated the payments. I'm like, don't pay me yet. Don't worry, just keep the money yourself. Pay me next month instead. They're like, oh yeah, thanks. So I'm like, that's all solved. Get my appointment 2.5 weeks later, and the person on the phone was like, no, we can't do this for you because it's not a simple corporation. It's a complex corporation. I was like, how so? Like, because it's not owned from you personally. The shares of the new corporation are going to be held by your holding company. I was like, yeah, like it's too complex. You need to go back into the branch and meet with the branch manager. I'm like, it's the same thing. You just have to, instead of the shares being owned by me, it's owned by this version of me. Like it's too complex. You have to go back to the branch. And it was another 2 weeks after that. And by the time I got to the branch, I was like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I just need this done. It's already been over a month that I've been trying to open the corporation. Brutal. So that was my situation, but it can get really tough if you're someone who is incorporating for the first time and all your income is personal, because during that delay, you're making your own tax situation worse and worse and worse because you're getting all that income on the personal side. So customer service can have profound effects if it's really bad customer service, but it can be game changing if it's good customer service. So I think for everyone listening, the bar is so low nowadays for customer service where if you just do the simple things like Mike was saying, pick up the phone and just talk to somebody, you can earn a ton of business. To Tyson's point, just problem solving, and you don't have to know all the answers, but if like I'm gonna find the answer out for you, you can get a lot of business, and you can do really great things because the bar is literally down there, especially from institutions like any kind of public company that's cutting costs, cutting staff, all that kind of stuff. The bar is just even lower than that. So that's my story when it comes to the branches. Not any one specific branch, YouTube, all the branches collectively, I think all the experience is the same. So, one thing that we do is we do give our clients access to private banking. So, a lot of people out there don't know what private banking is and they just assume they can never get into private banking. So, Tyson actually knows this better than I do. But a lot of our clients can actually qualify better than the standard person out there for private banking. So, Tyson, before I butcher it, what is private banking benefits for the people listening? How can our clients get in there, easier than the other ones do?
Yeah, so private banking is just like an elevated level of concierge type service. So back in the day, I mean, they might even still do it now, but when the Amex Black Card came out, it was an exclusive club where they had a concierge you can call 24/7. They will do stuff for you. And private banking operates very similar, where you'll have a dedicated banker and you can call them and say, hey, listen, I need to, we're putting a deposit on a house or something like that. That's more legal, but we're putting a deposit on something. We need to send a draft immediately. We need it couriered to, to this business partner. They'll just do it over the phone. They know you, they're verified. They deal one-on-one with you, and they can do stuff like that. If you need them, I had a client that he has a private banker, and they would receive packages for the client because they were out of country. And so somebody's got to sign for it. Hey, a private banker can do that. So instead of sending it to the house that's empty, send it to the private banker. They sign for it. That's not common, but that stuff like that happens. So you're getting an elevated level transactionally of what the banking experience can be. And much to the stories that you were just telling and that I have experienced as well, is when you go into a retail bank branch now, there's almost no customer service available. And so, great
Certainly not
customer service.
expertise either. Not a
Yeah,
lot of expertise on anything.
definitely not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The other side to that is the private credit that's available to you. So we have a couple of different lanes that are available to us there, and the way that they do the private credit sometimes is very dynamic. And so they will work with you to build something, and they call it like a lending portfolio versus, this is your line of credit, and this is a car loan, and this is a mortgage, and they could bundle it all together. And a lot of them, the barrier to entry is really high. So you'd have to have like $1 million of borrowing in order to qualify to get in with some of these ones. And one of our other partners is, it's about what did he say? $250,000 to get in.
Yeah.
Oh, so if you have a lending need in your business or personally, $250,000, 250,000 is they can get you in, they can get you qualified through our connection, through our network. And so, and you get the exclusive credit card that they have through there that's fancy, and it's probably metal and all of that stuff. We're working on getting ours, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
I mean,
asked them, I was like, can I get my metal card? They're like, is your name Tyson? I was like, nah, they're like, get out of here. I'm like, all right.
it does. I mean, private banking is amazing, but it does come at a cost. It's not free. So
That's right.
just to put that out there, it's. I mean, they're all different, so it depends on what you're looking for. But it's like everything in life. Sadly, if you pay more, you tend to get a little bit more. So it's kind of like I don't know. There's lots of different examples, but when I've looked into it, I mean, there's some fascinating parts to it. I've seen ones where they can, especially if you have US accounts and US dollars, and they can move things around for you. And
Yes.
actually, I've seen where they'll do automatic moves overnight and then bring it back the next day. And like, depending on
Wow.
how much money you have with them, and the bigger you are, obviously, the more they'll do for you. So,
Yeah.
sadly, that's the way a bank used to operate in the 50s. Like, you used to know the people in the branch, and they were great, and they knew their stuff, and they looked after you. And now they're just kind of like ATMs with, and I'm not putting people down in the branches. I don't mean it that way. I just mean that their focus is not. I mean, can you imagine their business is to open accounts, and you tried to open an account for a month, and they didn't want to do it. Like, that just
Yeah.
That's
seems
right.
crazy to me.
That's right. That's
And
right.
it's not the people, to your point, like it's not the employees, it's the institution itself that what they train, what they prioritize, and if you do something good for the client, a lot of times you get reprimanded for it. We've heard so many horror stories. CBC Marketplace did a thing about it. Like it's not a secret how bad that experience is. What is unfortunately kind of a secret is how many alternatives there are out there, and that's what we really do with our clients is kind of hold their hands and help them solve all their problems one by one. And sometimes that problem is they're having really a tough time when it comes to the bank. So we are able to get them into the private banking, and many times it's not as expensive as people may think, and sometimes it ends up being cheaper, depending the complexities of the situation and what they're actually using the branch for.
Yeah. Well, if you
And
think
it
about
really helps.
the size of some of our clients, and they have massive businesses, they're super busy. They don't have they don't have 6 weeks to wait to open a
Yeah.
new account. And so you call your guy and say, "Hey, these are my corporate documents. My lawyer's going to send it to you. Open the account. I need it active tomorrow." Done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Currency exchanges, if you travel, they can get you better rates than normal when it comes to currency exchanges. Say I'm going to the States for a conference, or going to Hawaii for like a continuing education conference. Need my money converted, boom, done. And it's in your account ready to go, or it's an envelope ready for you to pick up by the time you get there. Businesses, we have a couple clients who, when we first signed on with them, they had a bunch of different line of credits or mortgages for investment properties, and maturity dates, renewal dates, and rates. Like it was just complex for them to keep up with. Whereas we can just consolidate that into one working line of credit, which Mike, you can probably speak to this better than I can. But as for us, from the analytical approach, it made a lot of sense because your overall cost of borrowing was significantly cheaper
Yeah.
having one working line of credit as opposed to all these different ones. And then from the client's perspective, they love the fact that it's like, finally, I have one account, not all these other random things, all these other random accesses. So, uh, can you speak a little bit about the working line of credit? Like, why would people want that, or who would want that type of situation
Yeah.
as
I
opposed to the
mean,
traditional?
I think a lot of there's a bit of like a HELOC is different than you can have a line of credit in your business. You can have there's different kinds of lines of credit, and like to your point, I mean, anytime people have things spread all over the place, it's hard to focus. You don't know, you can't keep track of everything and the balances that where everything is, and so sometimes simplification can be so worthwhile because you just bring it all into one and make it simple for you to keep track of. Many businesses, you need to buy stock at the beginning of the month and then you're going to sell that stuff and then pay the thing off either that month or the next month. That's a great use of a line of credit. I mean, it gives you way more access to using capital to build your business and grow faster. In total sense. Sadly, HELOCs have been marketed to Canadians in a way that it's good for some, but most of them, it's just I call it the never never plan because they set up a $200,000 HELOC and it's just for emergencies, and all of a sudden a year later it's full, and all they're doing is paying interest on it, and they never pay it down because they can't afford to. Banks love that; they're going to make a ton of money on that. Gee, I wonder why they market them so hard. So it really is just like investing. Mortgages are about setting up the right product for the right person and what that's about. So to your point about private bankers, I mean, they're in a position where not only they have access to products that the bank or the branch doesn't have, they can do things the branch can't do, and they can look at your overall picture and build the right lending platform for that person. So yeah, it's a no brainer for certainly somebody with a busy business and time. I mean, it makes sense to pay that because your time is worth way more than standing in line at a branch that isn't going to be able to service them properly anyways.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, but you're supposed to call instead now, and then you're supposed to go back to the branch, and then you're supposed to call, and then you're supposed to go back to the branch.
Yeah.
Pain. There's two things I would love to talk about before we run out of time. One, Tyson, is going to be for you predominantly, and then Mike, one for yourself. But I'd love to talk about portfolio equity, which I'll talk about that kind of quickly, and then Mike, for yourself. I think it would be a disservice if we didn't talk about the changes that happened in the mortgage space, because I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is great for first-time home buyers, 30 years for any kind of build," and other people are like, "It sucks." So there's a lot of confusion. So I'd love your opinion on that. But
Okay.
uh, first thing, inequality is so common nowadays in a number of different ways. Some of them, we can do things about. Some of them we can't. One of the things we can help with is the inequality when it comes to access to investments. The vast majority of Canadians out there if you're watching this, it's probably you. Either don't invest because you're scared or confused, or just invest in simplified platforms where it's like, I'm just gonna get broad market exposure and just leave it and that's it. Which sometimes can give you really good ups, but sometimes it gives you really big downs as well. And they don't have the emotional restraint, I suppose, to kind of stick it through or deal with the losses. And sometimes they have short-term goals that are in that investment because that's all they know they have access to. And then markets plummet, and then everything kind of falls apart. So one thing that we try and focus on with some of our business partners is investment or portfolio quality. So Tyson, what does that mean for our clients at portfolio planning?
Yeah, so there's a couple of like phases, I guess, to like answer the question is used to be investments were kind of for rich people. And then throughout the 80s, they became diversified, where it really became accessible to the middle class. And that was awesome because we really built the middle class. Nowadays, we have a lot of DIY investment options. And so people can start investing from almost $0. You can start with like $25 and buy fractional investments in stocks or in ETFs or in mutual funds, whatever your platform you're on. So the barrier to entry has been changed, and that's good. However, the DIY investors, sometimes they're buying based on no investment strategy. They're buying the news cycle. They're buying what's already been hot, and they don't have a strategy for how to get in, how to get out, and how to manage or mitigate risk throughout their lifetime. And and then you kind of graduate up. So you can get scooped up by a bank platform or an investment platform or a shop, like where I used to work. We won't mention any names, but and they do some investments, they do financial planning, they offer you a variety or a basket of choices. Once you hit a certain level, though, you should be treated as a high net worth investor. And a lot of times you aren't. The barrier to entry now isn't $500,000. It's now $1 million to access some of the premier shops. And again, I guess we won't mention any names, but every bank has a premier level. And you don't get access to that unless you have $1 million or your family has $1 million invested with them. And part of the reason for that is those channels don't pay commissions on accounts smaller than a certain dollar amount. So if they take you on and you have less than that, they're doing a service because they're trying to keep the whole family happy. What we really have access to is a private client portfolio level where you can get things that are usually only available to institutional billion-dollar funds, but you can do it at a middle class Canadian level that's done well. And they will bring to the table a bunch of things that are going to actually really diversify your portfolio and not just diversify amongst stocks because then you're still all in stocks and not diversify amongst bonds because then you're still in stocks and bonds, but starting to look at different asset classes like real estate and like private equity. So buying companies that are not listed on an exchange, buying companies that are maybe outside of the country that you're not really supposed to buy, and you can't buy in with your $10,000. You have to buy a chunk of the company in order to make it reasonable. So one of our partners, they do these kind of things, and it's called the Yale Endowment Model of investing. And Yale University piloted this in the 80s, and they did extremely well for over 30 years, posting, above market returns. And it's not just that the returns were high and they were good, which they were, but on years where the market really pulls back, that diversification and those other asset sleeves that are in your portfolio, they don't go down because all of real estate's not going to go down when stock market goes down. And all of the other strategies, they're not going to pull back because they're not affected by the speculation that's in the marketplace right now, where we kind of witnessed that in the last couple of years with GameStop and some of these other meme stocks where, the uh, the mob can really influence what's going on in your portfolio, and you don't have that in these portfolios. And we can do that for our clients, and they don't have to have $1 million. They can do it for a lot less, and it's really something that's interesting that you can invest like a rich person, even though you're not yet rich.
Don't you think on your point, talking about customer service, talking about, the new way people are DIY, it's almost like a lot of people aren't aware that they need advice,
Yeah,
right? I mean, they talked to their friend Bob, and Bob did this, and he made a fortune, even though he really didn't. He's just saying that,
that's right.
and maybe he went up a little bit, but he's going to make it way bigger. And sadly, those people that really need the advice aren't going to probably get the advice they need, and that's where I think like stuff like this is amazing because you can bring people in that yeah, they're not going to go into the premier bank investment group because they just don't have those kind of numbers.
Yeah,
But they could get the right advice and the right product that's going to help them be truly diversified. Not like you said, I have two stocks, not one, so I'm diversified.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, a lot of the times the advice that we give clients is about risk mitigation. It's not necessarily like, hey, you do this, you're going to get 1,000% return, because
Yeah,
that's pie in the sky, and
yeah,
it might happen, but you might lose 1,000%. No one
yeah,
wants to say the downside, right?
yeah,
So our advice is a lot of the times about risk mitigation. And what I tell clients is, hey, we want to do two things really, really well. We don't want to waste time, and we don't want to waste money, because we can't get the time back. We could probably get the money back,
yeah.
but you don't want to lose money. And so when talking about some of these strategies and some of the education, really once people understand the process, the level of risk comes down. And so like in real estate investing, if you're a brand new real estate investor and you're doing like what we were talking about earlier, you're just gonna go buy foreclosures because that's what my guy told me to do. You have no knowledge, the risk is really high.
Yeah.
But if you know what you're doing and you know how to like read a deal and you know how to put it together, your level of risk comes down because you can see kind of like what's happening and who the players are and where the gotchas are. And the same is with, like investing in securities and building your portfolio and financial planning for yourself and for your business. The more you understand and the better level of education you get from your team is the more your risk comes down. And then, blood pressure comes down and anxiety comes down. And now you can focus on the things that you want to focus on. So for some people, that's they want to get back to business. And for some people, they want to spend more time with their family. And then in the older demographic is they want to be retired and not worry like, is my retirement going to be cut short? Do I have to go
Yeah.
back to work? Like all of those kind of things. And that level of integration of the team, it brings down all those levels, and now you get to focus on what you want to focus on.
Which sounds like really good customer service.
It can be,
It's all goes full circle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part, yeah, is people don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they don't need, and they don't know what they're missing access to. So one of the most important things is you deserve to at least have a conversation. And if you're watching this, just realize that you should have a conversation. You're important enough to have a conversation to see what's out there for you. So just initiate that conversation. We can't do it for you. You got to do it for yourself. Just advocate for yourself. Book a meeting, reach out, send a DM to whoever, hopefully us, and just be like, what am I missing? Because a lot of times, if you're not taking advantage of all the things that are available to you, someone else is winning and you're losing, they're winning. So if you want to flip that script, make sure you just reach out and have a conversation. On that point, I would love to switch gears and talk about mortgages. So Mike, there's been a bunch of different changes in the mortgage world thanks to Christine Freeland,
Yeah.
um, and all her efforts to make homeownership more affordable. So give a quick synopsis. I know you did a great video on your newsletter.
Yeah.
I think a couple weeks back. But yeah, what's been changing? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? What's
It was
happening?
announced like 5 days ago. So it's let's put it in political terms. They're doing this to try and attract first time buyer vote. We know that group has been in terrible shape because of what the economy's done and the pricing on homes and everything else. So is it going to solve that? No, it's not going to solve that. There's a small group. It might help a little bit. In terms of going from a 25-year amortization to a 30-year amortization, of course, it drops the payment a little bit, and that's probably a good thing. You're also stretching your payment over a longer period. That's not always such a bad thing. I think there's a lot of media hype about, oh, it's terrible, you're going to pay off your mortgage longer. Well, having a 30-year amortization doesn't mean you have to take 30 years. You can literally, going from a monthly payment to a bi-weekly accelerated payment or a weekly accelerated payment knocks probably 5 years off that. So right away you can, and if you make some extra payments, there's a lot of coaching involved in that stuff. But just on the having a 30-year available, I think is smart. We used to have 40 years way back. And people survived that too. So that to me should never have been taken away. It was taken away. It's been brought back. Good news. I think that's great. But the other part of this is they raised the high ratio limit from 1 million to 1.5 million. And what that means is if you buy a property for 1.499 million or less, you can put less than 20% down. They haven't actually said what the exact rules are on this yet, so it's kind of an announcement without knowing what it means. Is it going to help people? Well, yeah, but you still have to qualify for that 1.499 million, and that's the part that is kind of misleading because you know, a lot of people are still not going to qualify anyways. But to me, there's a small market group that it makes a lot of sense. If you were in a $800,000 home right now and your family's growing and you really need to move to a bigger house, what it might allow you to do is sell your place, use your equity to buy the next place, and maybe even use some of your equity to pay off some of your debts so that you end up with a slightly higher mortgage payment, but now you only have that and you have the house you need. So if that group, yeah, that makes sense to me. But a first-time buyer that's still struggling to buy a $500,000 place is not going to be looking any higher than that anyway. So it isn't helping them. So there's lots of hype, lots of media. If they're pro-liberal, then they're saying it's the greatest thing ever. And not to get into the politics of it, but there's some goodness to it, and there's some parts that aren't going to help a lot of people. But the downside is this could also cause prices to go up again because what we used to see was a really there's like the price range of 800 to 1 million has always been under pressure because a lot of people who probably should be buying a $1.2 million place either don't have the down payment for that and they used to come and kind of poach the houses that were less because they wanted to put less down. That's going to happen now in the higher all the way up to 1.5. So it could cause some price pressure on some of that. So yeah, it's going to be something where it's good in general, but once again, just like we're talking about, everybody's situation is individual, and they need to get some good advice on how it's going to impact them and if it is going to impact them. So that's
Yeah.
me in a nutshell talking about mortgages.
That was my initial thought. It's going to make it uber competitive in that under $1.5 million range.
Yeah,
And like here in the lower mainland, townhouses and condos are already $1 million. And so now they're going to be 1.3 million like overnight
yeah.
and even less affordable. And I don't know how that's going to solve our problems of affordability.
No, it won't. I mean, the good news is also we're in a lowering rate cycle, so that will help a little
Yep.
bit. But it could also cause more people to come out of the woodwork and start looking at properties, and like you said, increase prices to some degree. So, if I guess to me, if you're thinking about doing something, you should be getting some good advice now, not just waiting until rates come down all the way. You need a plan. It's always good to have a plan and see if it's going to impact you and how it's going to impact you. So, yeah, it's it's not a bad thing, but there's going to be some negativity to it, because of it. So
Yeah.
we will see some impacts for sure.
Awesome.
It always goes both ways. Like there's always good and bad. But I had the same thought as Tyson when I saw the announcement. I was like, all right, well, prices are just gonna go up.
Yeah,
That's all really gonna
yeah,
happen.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's usually the sellers and the realtors that win in that case because it's all supply and demand. Like the biggest thing, there's just not enough inventory. So if you have something that's in that $1 million price range, like sweet, now I can bump it up and people still gotta buy it. So um yeah, it's a bunch of things that need to be fixed, but I think we're at time. Thanks everyone for joining us again. Thanks Mike, thanks Tyson. It's always good to catch up with you guys on a weekly basis, and we have some cool things coming in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna have some lawyers on next week to talk about legal stuff because there's a bunch of considerations when it comes to legal, when it comes to your business, your family, prenups, what it does and doesn't do. Like there's a bunch of stuff that we'll talk about next week. So stay tuned. And of course, if you have any questions, send them in and we will hit them off 1 week at a time. So thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.